This week, Emmet and I discuss issues 6 through 10 of Jack Kirby's 2001 A Space Odyssey series, featuring the first appearance of Mr. Machine, later known as Machine Man. After 7 issues, Kirby seems to have abandoned not only his instructions to create no ongoing characters, but also nearly any references to the 2001 world of Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. A look at all 5 of these issues is coming up. Don't forget we now have a voicemail. To leave us a message, click the Leave a Voicemail link on the sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com. This is Tim.
This is Emmet.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo. Emmet is somewhere outside of Melbourne, country Victoria. How are you doing?
I'm well, Tim. I'm well. It's a bit nippy. I'm here with my cup of tea, trying to survive the Melbourne/Victoria winter.
Yeah, it's a little chilly here today, too, and still fairly early spring. Yeah, so we're picking up with the second half of Kirby's 2001 series. When we left off in the middle of a story. But before we get to that, we got a letter. We got an email.
Oh, correspondence.
An email from someone named Joven K. And Joven says, I don't envy you having to read all those pointless 2001 comics.
Oh, Joven.
Talk about a meaningless premise. Something happens, then a monolith shows up and someone becomes a baby/planet. I'm sure that Emmet will draw our attention to some positive things about the issues, though. Yeah, I think he's right about that.
Sure.
The only thing that stuck in my head from those books was Kirby's depiction in one issue, I think he's talking about issue 5, of a far-flung future where people have evolved into these weak, isolated creatures who crawl around their cubicles in outer space. Man, that really freaked me out. So bleak. So I just came across this quote that I think substantiates my notion that Kirby was burnt out on doing comics at that point. David Anthony Kraft said, I was editing Foom, that was the Friends of Old Marvel kind of fan magazine Marvel was doing in the 70s. And I was talking to Jack on the phone, trying to promote Devil Dinosaur. I said, is there anything you can give me to help me push this book? He paused and he said, yeah, Devil Dinosaur. He's red. That's what I got. He is indeed red, yes.
Well, interesting, Joven, that you would write to us and call out these comics in particular as being pointless. What does Joven mean? Well, Joven derives from Jupiter. Jupiter is, king of the gods, father of the gods in the Roman version of mythology. Where else do we know Jupiter from? Well, the planet Jupiter, the Jupiter in our solar system. How is that related to 2001? Well, it gets blown up in 2010. Is this one of the species from the Jupiter planet that gets unfairly targeted by the Monolith and Arthur C. Clarke series of books? Perhaps it is. I've caught you. I see what you are. I won't stand for this propaganda.
But yeah, I'm actually glad to have read these issues, even though I wasn't crazy about some of them. But had you ever read any of these issues before we started doing them for the podcast?
No, not at all. And in fact, we'll get to Mr. Machine in this run of issues, and we've had highlighted that we're going to be coming to this character for the entirety of this conversation, because that's what 2001, the comic book series, is most known for in certain corners. It's like, this is where Machine Man originally came from, Aaron Stack, as he's now known. And part of that was, I remember lots of publicity around Next Wave, which was Warren the Prick Ellis's comic book series, where they would make these sort of snide comments about, he was this crazy character. Aaron Stack was this crazy character that Jack Kirby came up with when he was sleep deprived and trying to pay his bills, and the 2001 coming out. We've given him a ironic coat of paint, and he hates flesh bag humans, and he says rude words, and he's drunk all the time, and it's so funny. And it's interesting reading the actual issues and encountering the character, and it's not a stupid character. It's not it's absolutely not a just sort of ridiculous premise. This is machine consciousness, becoming self-aware, encountering the monolith, and struggling with that form of consciousness that it's evolved. And that's a really interesting idea. And it's Jack Kirby, so it's not ironic in the slightest. It's very much, here's some things I believe. Here's some ideas I have. Yeah. And we've talked about how each of these issues is almost like a little mini essay in itself, like a little sort of exercise in storytelling with a theme. And what I've enjoyed about reading this back half of 2001 is that the themes become even more explicit again. But it's very much Jack Kirby does, philosophy for an issue, and then he moves on to the next idea, and he does it again. I find it like a really interesting exercise. And again, I say this without like making major plaudits for this. I'm not saying this is an incredible comic book series. I'm not saying this is like the best thing I've ever read or anything like that. But it's really interesting, and it's really inventive, and it's a creator locked into these limits, both professionally and within the premise of the book. He's been given this straitjacket of a book to work within, and he produces something that's very worth your while, at least once. Because, so often I would compare it to contemporary creators who would have a career, which is a rare thing, a paycheck from a publisher, also a rare thing, and they just produce drivel. It's just like moving the needle slightly forward along the plane. Whereas this is like Jack Kirby at this sort of dog end of his career, producing these comics and just shooting for the moon almost every time. Like, let's talk about consciousness.
Yeah.
Let's just go. And I'm going, that's great, man. That's great.
Before you read any of these, what did you envision the 2001 series to maybe consist of?
Well, as we've talked about, I hadn't read the comics, but I had read the novels. Right? So I was wondering, would Kirby try and anticipate what Clarke did? And what Clarke did in between 1968 and 1997 became increasingly ridiculous. Like, the novels are absurd. Like, you get to 2061 and the bloom has well and truly gone off the rose. Like, it's going to bad places. And in 3001, which is the last book, which I think I mentioned previously, I didn't believe I'd read. I read a summary of it before we started talking to him. I've read this book. Okay. I had actually erased it from my brain. I go, no, you don't need to think about that anymore. I have actually read it. And it's nonsense. It's complete crap. So my worry would have been that Kirby would also run the premise into the ground, right? Because it's a limited premise. Humanity encounters a higher being. Members of humanity are evolved into some transcendent state. Story ends. Okay, and he took that and he said, "I will just keep doing that because that's the story." But the variations he's starting to introduce as we get into the back half of his comic run become increasingly inventive and increasingly experimental. And it's just, oh man, the new seed issue. I had never heard of this one. I'd heard about Mr. Machine, all the rest of it. I'd never heard of this one. No. And this felt like, I feel like I go to the same range of references every time, so I apologize, but I think we are dealing with this kind of material. It felt like Jodorowsky's Enkal at times. It's like, I'm just going to just go pure cosmic. And, we're talking about mixing biblical myth with space opera and a post-apocalyptic setting. And we're just going to throw those things into a blender together. And it's like, sure, go for it, Jack. Let's see what happens.
I mean,
And,
before we started reading it, well, I had expected there would be more connection to other parts of the movie rather than the end. I mean, he couldn't create new characters because of the concern about who would own them. But he does use some existing sort of characters, the Monolith, the Star Child. So, and of course, you could go to like a pre-movie HAL 9000 story or
Professor Chandra,
something about Dr. Floyd, maybe, because he makes it out of the movie without dying. So
he comes back in the books. Books as well. He's the repeat character until 3001, which is 1,000 years later. So now we've got the defrosted Frank Poole who becomes a cyborg. Oh, spoiler! Frank Poole comes back,
played by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I can't remember any of Mr. Freeze's catchphrases. I can only think of Schwarzenegger's lines in Commando. He had to drop off. I can't think of Mr. Freeze's catchphrase. Damn it!
I don't remember right now either.
But yeah, no, exactly. You'd think you would just keep using those characters from the book, which is what Clarke himself does. Clarke does keep revisiting the same characters. But Kirby just introduces a range of anonymous characters with random Anglo-Saxon names. And and various things happen to them. And I did love the issue where we meet another astronaut and we're just told, bad stuff happened to him and now he's up in this heaven place and he's going to work. he can't even really remember what happened to him. It's like, we've seen it before. It doesn't really matter, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into the issues. So we're starting with number 6, having done the first 5 last time. This is dated May 1977, and the cover says, "Join an awesome cosmic manhunt. The prize, immortality. The penalty, death."
Oh my God. The stakes have literally never been higher.
And we can see, I guess it's supposed to be the back of Harvey Norton looking at a screen, and there are aliens on it, and one of them is saying, "Behold us, Harvey Norton, we are doom for you and for your planet Earth."
Doesn't it look just like the aliens from This Island Earth? Where they had the telecast, and they had the big bulbous foreheads, and they're like, "Oh, the Earth is doomed. We're going to destroy the Earth." I just remember Mystery Science Theater. The Mystery Science Theater movie did a big bit about This Island Earth as well.
It's interesting, though, the aliens on the cover look different from the aliens in the book. I mean, I turned the page here to the splash page, which is a similar scene, but the aliens look quite different.
So are we going to put the blame on Michael Rower, the inker, for maybe refining their faces a bit? Because the cover aliens are very traditional Kirby. I don't know.
I mean, the colors are different and everything. I'm wondering if somebody said, for the cover image, these aliens don't have enough impact. You need to change them for the cover, maybe.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. They've got finer features inside the comic.
Yes.
Yeah, they're less sort of monolithic. Pardon the pun.
The ones on the cover look a little more threatening. Their eyes are bigger and they look angrier. Where the ones inside just kind of look solemn.
Yeah. Yeah, but very 1950s. That's why I thought of This Island Earth. 1950s alien. I am from the planet Megatron. I come to you with a message of war.
So we're skipping ahead a bit in the story here from where the previous issue ended. And it took me a couple pages to kind of catch up with what had happened in between. But But Harvey and the other two astronauts, had encountered this alien woman with a huge head, and they've now brought her on board their spacecraft, and others of her kind appear to be demanding her back. But there's a language barrier. There's no universal translator. So neither they nor we know exactly what the aliens are saying.
It's quite funny, though, because on the cover we have dialogue from the aliens, and on the inside page, it's like they can't understand them. It's like, speak up. What's that?
Right, they speak English on the cover, right?
Yeah.
But not inside. We don't even hear their alien words. It's just they're like on the screen.
They're in a Teams message, and you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, that's the problem.
That's what it is.
It's not that they speak a different language, but they're on mute. That's the problem.
They're saying something, but I can't understand what they're saying. What are they saying? Oh, he's on mute. You're on mute.
Maybe that's why. I noticed that these aliens seem to have no appreciation for the language barrier. They're like, blah, 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 blah. And now why aren't you doing what we ask? Well...
Yeah, they're English tourists abroad. That's what they do. Hello? Yes, hello. Sausages. Hello? What? Good to do? Just get louder. Those are speaking louder.
So Norton refers to this female alien as the princess, and we never really find out if she actually is some kind of princess, but the other aliens seem to be wanting her handed over to them. And somehow they've figured out that she's on their craft. And Norton observes that, and one of the other astronauts says, "That's simple to understand. They've got girl detectors." What?
Well, it's funny that they've come up with that. Well, because they're making fun of him, unless that's him actually saying that, unless that's Norton saying that.
No, it's a different word balloon. I think it's a response.
It's a different word balloon? Because they were just making fun of him for being such a comic book nerd. I suppose it fascinates you. We're in a life and death situation, Norton. What we need the least is your comic book mentality. Oh, Norton, you're such a nerd. But yeah, that's then they come up with girl detectors, so they're pretty nerdy too. Maybe in the future, that's how they try to date. It's like Jack Kirby didn't imagine dating apps and swiping left and swiping right. Maybe in this future, men have girl detectors and they wander the streets trying to find a potential romantic partner.
Yeah. So the aliens fire on them, and so Norton takes the woman and they depart in her ship, and he leaves a note behind for his colleagues. So long and thanks for all the fish, or something like that.
Oh, nice.
So she's driving, and she puts the ship into what the narration calls star drive. It's like a hyperdrive, light speed or something. And Norton doesn't know what's going on. He sees all this fire in their path and thinks the universe is on fire. But it's just what happens, I guess, when you use star drive. And they end up at some other stop incredibly far from Earth, and a whole different civilization, but their pursuers track them there, and they crash on some kind of planet. So it's a lot of kind of fantastic, imaginative drawings here by Kirby.
Lots of alien landscapes, rock structures. Well, it's funny that you made your Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference, because that page, it almost looks like the restaurant at the end of the universe, like how I always imagined it as a kid. So it's that kind of there's this sort of space station, if you like, that looks quite inviting, actually. But they crash land, and then those aliens with their damn girl detectors arrive.
And there's a little building on this planet up ahead, and he takes it to be a fort. And she clearly wants to go there, but these their pursuers keep firing on them. But they manage to make it to this fort, and it turns out there's like a transporter in it. And she gets in the transporter and vanishes, and he's going to follow her, but then the bad guys catch up with them and destroy the building. And Norton is left sprawled on the ground amidst broken rocks, and then the monolith appears, and then we resort to form. It ends like all the other issues have.
Yeah, it's sort of like a heroic sacrifice. He again, like as is traditional with Western comics, he's died in the cruciform pose almost. He gave his life, to save this alien princess, and then the monolith comes for him. So there's this idea of a religious apex. But yeah, we cut then to him in his superhero afterlife, which is fascinating. Captain Cosmic is a much better name than White Zero, I have to say.
Yes. Right. So his rapidly aging scenario is as a superhero, Captain Cosmic.
Oh no, I'm in a Frank Miller comic.
Right. I was a little disappointed that we ended up ending the same as all the other stories have, basically. I mean, it did kind of tie back into the superhero thing from the first issue, but I felt like the second issue could have tied into the first issue more. They felt almost like two independent stories to me.
Yeah, I feel like we couldn't let go of Norton, so we had to spend more time with him. But I genuinely loved that first glimpse of a future given over to the superhero obsession. And that's a perfect done-in-one story. You don't need to put more meat on that set of bones, It's perfectly fine as a single issue. But the guy made the suggestion of you should join the Space Corps, and he does. But,
and so he kind of becomes a real superhero, I guess is the point.
Yeah, he becomes a hero. But it's weird because, again, it's by the reckoning of this timeline, access to the space program must be much easier. So the notion of the heroic astronaut, I would have thought, would be a thing of the past, because now you actually almost have space travel for pleasure, So, like, now if you were to take a flight, you wouldn't be a hero because it's just an everyday thing. You take a flight from Japan back to the States, But there would have been a time when a person taking a flight, not just as a pilot but as a passenger on a plane, would be considered somewhat heroic, like daring, adventurous. And I felt as if that same decline of heroism has set in by the time Norton gets on a spacecraft. Like he's not breaking any.
Yeah, it's become commuting.
Correct. But he's actively working as a astronaut. So maybe it's a bit of column A, bit of column B. But yeah, it just felt like a tacked on ending. And then we came back to his superhero persona at the end, and it was kind of beautiful in a way. But I agree. I think it was a done-in-one story. I don't think it needed that second half. We could have just done another. I guess where it sort of connects back is he interprets everything through the lens of his comic book fandom. So even when he encounters an alien species, he immediately goes, "Oh, well, this is clearly the alien princess." And I am John Carter of Mars, and now we're going to go off on this wild adventure together. And he's like blowing up alien vessels with a gun by the end of it. Like he's killing aliens left and right. He's pulling down Arnold Schwarzenegger numbers at the end of that issue. But yeah, I just felt it's a tighter story. And then the next issue, the new seed, is a tight, done in one. Here we go, and that's what I enjoy. Is I feel like Kirby sort of hit his stride with these one shots, and then when we got to Mr. Machine, we returned to the long form because it's now becoming a stealth preview of a new comic book series. And I wonder if that was the editorial directive or if that was him just deciding to roll the dice and see what he'd get away with it. But I kind of was starting to enjoy the done in one little mini philosophy essays.
So the last panel of issue 6 says more about the new seed. Where does it go? What does it do? Coming next, the child. And so I expected that we were going to follow the star child that was Harvey, but we don't.
Right.
It's a completely different character. It's a complete reset. We've finished up with Harvey. So, yeah, issue 7 says, at last, the most fantastic revelation of them all, the new seed. And we see Starchild and some dead people on a ruined planet.
So I guess my question is, how many astronauts has the space program lost to the Monolith at this point? And is anyone observing that? Is there any sort of data on, well, they keep going missing? And then shortly afterwards, we see these slow, bold alien babies flying around because this issue reveals that people can see them, which I didn't realize. They actually are physically present. They're not on some transcendental realm of reality. They're actually there. Again, very literal space babies.
Right. So this issue starts with what's usually the ending. It's an astronaut named Gordon Pruitt who is rapidly aging. His astronaut uniform disappears and he changes to what it says like outdoor clothes because he's from Colorado and he loves being in the outdoors. And of course he dies. He becomes a star child. But then, the concept of this issue is what happens then? Once you're a star child, then what do you do? Of course, we see the space baby flying around the universe and seeing, again, all kinds of, spectacular, imaginative things, civilizations and just, space stuff, planets and asteroids and big, like, dinosaur-ish creatures fighting each other.
Yeah, we're back into the sort of cosmic French bande dessinée. Let's just throw everything in there style that Kirby has. I guess it's a chicken and the egg question for me. I mean, did Kirby inspire Juillet or did Juillet inspire Kirby? And the Metal Hurlant guys, like, were they riffing on Kirby's cosmic stuff in France more so than the Americans were? I mean, that's a question for somebody else to answer, I guess. But yeah, it reminds me of those like albums you can buy in France and you turn on the page and it's just all of a sudden it's just like, here's a 2-page spread of a giant war on an alien landscape and all these species just mushing into each other. You turn the page and now it's a romance scene. It's just we did that. We're moving on,
So yeah, the Star Child here, I realize it looks just like the Watcher.
It does look like the Watcher.
With the big bald head.
Now, Tim, at the time of recording, it is midway through April. The latest episode of X-Men 97 has dropped. Have you been following this at all?
No, I haven't read X-Men in quite a while.
X-Men 97 is an animated show on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay.
And it's
I haven't watched the X-Men either.
The premise of the show is that the 1990s X-Men cartoon continued, and these are the episodes that didn't get aired.
Okay.
That's the kind of the premise. But the stories that they're using are stories from the actual X-Men comics. They're taking literal storylines and just dropping them into the animated series. Okay? And the recent episode dropped this week, and fans online have declared it the definitive X-Men story. Like, there are people who go, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And some stuff happens. I won't spoil you if you do choose to watch it, but and for those listening. But at one point, the Watcher appears, but very, very subtly. There's like a sort of outline in the night sky, and it's the Watcher's face, and his eyes are like stars, and he just briefly appears. And people online are like, "Oh my God, the Watcher! That means something bad's about to happen." I love that the Marvel zombie set, we're hardwired to, when you see the Watcher, oh, that's bad. That's a bad thing. Or Reed and Sue are getting married. But
right. Anyway, so the Star Child arrives on this planet where there was a city that's all in ruins. Because of a war that happened there. And there are a few surviving humans for the moment. And these like rough guys who were just, kind of Mad Max type of crew.
Yeah, very much Mad Max.
And then a pair of lovers who, long story short, they both get killed.
Yeah, we had to endure an attempted rape scene first, but yeah, there's we see the dregs of this humanoid species just at their worst, and even at this point, even when things are reduced to pure barbarism, you have these two lovers who are trying to fight off their attackers and stay together and survive, and the new seed sort of witnesses them and witnesses their love, and that's the sort of idea of even in the worst of times, there's still something good. There's something that survives.
Yeah. So the Star Child, what does he do exactly? He kind of takes their life essence, even though they're not alive anymore, and he plants it on a different planet where there is no life yet.
Yeah, he takes their essence and combines it so that it will create new life. So it's almost like their love survives their death, and births new life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a billion years, as the narration tells us.
Sure. Yeah. It's very romantic. It's very sort of did you see the new Matrix film? The sort of return of one of the Wachowski siblings to the Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
And they did a new film. Anyway, one of the reveals, because spoiler for the first 3 Matrix films, but everyone died at the end. So like there was this sense of, well, how are the actors all back? Because a bunch of them got killed. And the answer is love, Tim.
Love. Okay.
But yeah, there's something I again, like as I was saying at the start, the Warren Ellis sort of ironic remake of Machine Man. I feel like I'm of a generation that was irony poisoned, and now I'm sort of I've aged out of that a bit. And when I read these comics, it's like, true love wins, and I go, yeah, that's nice actually. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. That's good. I do believe in love.
Now,
Check back in 10 years, I'll be a completely different person.
I'm wondering about the ending here. He writes, "A billion years will pass before lovers may live again to test the whims of fate. Perhaps here a way of being may find the why of being. Until then, the new seed decides to seek the answer himself. What if it turned out to be merely simple?" So I wasn't sure I interpreted that correctly, but it sounded to me like he was saying like the simple answer is just don't have a war, just to get along, which seems to be a lot harder than you would think.
I think the simple answer is love.
Okay.
I think it is like he's preserved these two on this new planet so that they can gestate new life, and in time it's like the idea of the demiurge, the god trapped in the earth, or in our plane of existence, and trying to figure out what it all means through us. Like we are God's consciousness sort of working at the equation of existence, through our experiences, to our loss, to our suffering, to our triumphs, etc., etc., etc. This sort of global consciousness will emerge and go, I get it. I know what this is all about. I know what life is. I know what existence is about. I get it now. And, that's the the why of being is literally, what's the point? Like, what is all this mean? And what if it's something simple? What if it's to experience, feel love? What if that's the answer? Because ultimately, with this kind of story, Kirby confronts you with all this horrible vistas of destruction and violence and etc. And then it ends on this note of, well, these two lovers get to go forward in a sense, and maybe their legacy is the thing that will bring meaning to this other form of life. So then what if the answer is simply love? Like, what if that's all there is?
Okay.
And yeah, it's a nice thought.
Coming up, Mr. Machine debuts, connected to 2001: A Space Odyssey by a translucent thread. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support. Edward and Alphonse Elric, as a result of attempting the forbidden act of resurrecting their mother with alchemy, have paid the price. Edward lost an arm and a leg. Alphonse lost his whole body, his soul now attached to a suit of armor. Together they search for a way to make their bodies complete again and uncover a deadly plot by their country's military rulers. That's the concept of Hiromu Arakawa's Fullmetal Alchemist, one of the best manga ever made. Tim and Patrick are rereading Arakawa's masterwork in search of interesting sound effects, translation errors, goofy humor, and, oh yeah, a great story. The podcast is The Law of Equivalent Exchange, a chapter-by-chapter look at the manga Fullmetal Alchemist. New episodes every other Monday, wherever podcasts are found. What are you willing to exchange? So the end of the issue says, okay, now you've met a new seed. So what else is there, you ask? Are you kidding, Buster? Ask your dealer next month for The Capture of X-51. Now, I'd known for a long time that Machine Man came from the series, but I'd always assumed that he arose kind of more organically from whatever the story of this book was, but nope.
No.
These last three issues are just like complete reset button. You almost forget that it's still 2001. I don't think it's even taking place in the future. It seems to be sort of a technologically advanced 1977, I think.
Here's the thing. So this book came out in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2010 by Arthur C. Clarke comes out in 1982. In 2010, Hal is restored. Hal comes back. Dr. Chan, is it Professor Chandra? I can't remember. Returns, and they go to the Odyssey, and they restore Hal, who had been shut down by David in the previous story. Hal comes back. At the end of 2010, Hal sacrifices himself for the crew. Unlike what he had previously done, which is he sacrificed the crew for the sake of the mission.
Yeah.
Now he's learned his lesson. Now he's like, okay, no, I need to die for the sake of the crew. And then he encounters the Monolith. Hal encounters the Monolith.
Okay.
And Hal transcends existence. And Hal
becomes a star computer?
Hal becomes a star child. Hal's consciousness actually is such that he transcends his physical destruction. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Jack Kirby anticipated Arthur C. Clarke's
of course.
story like 5 years beforehand. So this is exactly what Aaron Stack, Machine Man, Mr. Machine, whatever you want to call him, same storyline. He is a machine intelligence. He's described to us as an intelligence who's been raised to think of himself as an individual. He knows he's a machine, but he also has a face, so he's got an identity. And in encountering the Monolith, he is given the choice to evolve, and he chooses not to. He's going to hang out on Earth for a bit and see what's going on, and earn that highest of honors, a Marvel superhero.
Okay, well, Yeah, I mean, the monolith pops in a couple of times in these three issues, and I guess I didn't quite get what was happening there. It just kind of felt like it was there to remind me that this was the 2001 series. But okay, so
I'm not dismissing your
Aaron,
point. I think you're right. It is a stealth pilot for a new character in a comic book series. You're correct. But it still thematically is kind of 2001 in that his consciousness is what makes him distinct.
okay,
Like he actually is an individual who thinks and has an identity. That's the point. And then because that what the monolith does is it elevates, it uplifts consciousness. That's what it does.
mm-hmm.
So in encountering it, Aaron also has that opportunity, and I think to some degree he has been influenced by it, similar to Beast Slayer or whatever his name was in the first issue. Like, he certainly seems to be a particular kind of machine intelligence by the end of these issues. Like he has a very developed personhood, but he already had personhood. That's the thing. Dr. Stack did a very good job on him.
Yeah, I wish I knew what was going on behind the scenes here, because it's such a complete change from the first 7 issues. I don't know if Kirby said, I don't care if I'm not supposed to create new characters, I'll do it anyway, or if the editorial changed their directive and said, go ahead and make a new character, or let's launch a new series, or... That's
what your research turned up, wasn't it? That you found that Wired article where the writer basically said that's what happened, that he just got bored and just decided to throw caution to the wind.
I guess I need to look at that Wired article again. Dante A. Champaglia's article in Wired says of Kirby and Marvel's restraints on 2001, eventually, though, he rebelled. Norton of New York 2040 AD in issues 5 and 6 is classic Kirby, a cross between Marvel's Inhumans and DC's New Gods, full of humans in wild future armor battling bizarro monsters and mutants surrounded by infernal machines. And then, in the final 3 issues, Kirby creates a new character, Machine Man, a purple cyborg originally called Mr. Machine, who proved so popular Marvel canceled 2001, gave the character its own books, and introduced it into the general Marvel population. Once again, I'll link to that article in the show notes. Yeah, it seems like that's what happened, because, yeah, it's not the first 7 issues at all when you get to these last 3. So there's a Dr. Broadhurst who has created a series of robots. They're all X and some number. And we see X-35 is going out of control, demanding to know why it was built and insisting that it's not a thing. And apparently this has happened before with these X-series robots. So Broadhurst decides to cancel the project in a very dramatic way. Let's hardly give the humans any warning before we blow up everything.
It's extreme, yeah.
But there's another model that's not kind of in this headquarters. It's X-51. Now, it's interesting how many different names our hero has here. He's X-51. He's Aaron Stack because he's been more or less adopted by Dr. Abel Stack. At the end of the issue, he calls himself Mr. Machine, and then, of course, later that changes to Machine Man. So you can call this guy by 4 different names.
Yeah. It also occurs to me when you were talking about the explosions, it reminds me of OMAC as well, where we had that first issue where they said, let's just blow up the factory. Let's just kill everyone inside here. I think Kirby likes blowing up.
Yeah, it's no beating around the bush in Kirby books, I guess.
He likes blowing up the tools of industry.
So we switch to Stack's house, where he's just developed a human-like face for Aaron, which they say it's welded on. I'm not sure how that works. I mean, later they're able to remove it fairly easily, so you wouldn't think so if it's welded on. But so he looks like a human except for his eyes. He's still got these lenses for eyes.
Bug eyes. Yeah.
So Stack somehow figures out that the explosives have been activated, but it's on a timer.
They told him. They told him.
Did they tell him?
They explicitly
Okay.
told him. Yeah, they told him to get clear. That they're going to blow up the robot from their point of view. Like, oh, we've decided the experiment's a failure. We're going to blow them all up. It's sad that we gave that one to you that you took into your house. Basically, you're going to lose your house if you don't get clear. I find it funny that like he successfully removes the bomb, and then he holds on to it, and I assume the thinking is, once it explodes, the military will come to the conclusion that, oh, we successfully detonated it, but Abel, for whatever reason, didn't leave, so we lost Abel in the process. That's a shame. And then won't pursue that line of inquiry that the robot's been destroyed. But X-51 goes on a bloody joyride and alerts everyone to his presence immediately.
Right. So, okay, I'm looking back here. Dr. Broadhurst says, right now I'm anxious for Stack to leave his house before that bomb goes off. I don't know that we actually see him being contacted about it, but
no, we don't. He's aware that it's happening, but yeah.
But yeah, he removes the bomb and it's ticking, and then, like, rather abruptly, he says, this day has now arrived that we were anticipating. It's time to leave. Bye, and kind of pushes Aaron out the door. Although Aaron seems fine with it, like he's been expecting this all along, even though it's happening kind of abruptly. But yeah, he flies away. He has this anti-gravity power that allows him to sort of float or fly away. And yeah, as soon as he's kind of out of earshot, the bomb goes off. And yeah, Abel Stack makes no effort to get away from it because he figures it's too late. I mean, if he had taken off a little sooner, I think he could have escaped getting blown up. But it's more dramatic if he dies, I guess.
Yeah, he says he won't be able to get clear, whereas X-51 could get clear because of its ability to cancel the gravity equation.
Yeah, this must be a really powerful explosive. It does seem to destroy the house. And who knows, we don't really see how much more it destroys. I mean, what does he have neighbors?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Tough for them.
But yeah, so we see Aaron, X-51, flying alongside a very contemporary-looking jetliner. And at this point I said, oh, is this the present? I mean, of course, in 2001, planes looked pretty much the same, but in fictional 2001 in the 70s, I would have expected something much more futuristic-looking.
Well, given the introduction of superhero themes...
yeah, that also...
This would imply it's present day.
Right. So yeah, it becomes kind of a stretch to call this 2001 a Space Odyssey because we have neither 2001 nor space.
Yeah. The Monolith was always there, so it could intersect with our timeline at any point, really. And we've seen it intersecting with human history at any point. So, if this was a usual issue of 2001, we would cut ahead 50 years and Machine Man's in space, and then he meets the Monolith again, and he's like, oh, hello, and then...
and then becomes a Star Child. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the pilot reports sighting this person. They figured out it was a robot because they saw the eyes. So he got really close to them. We can see them seeing him out the front window of the plane. And then when Aaron lands, he lands on this building ledge, and a couple of people in a neighboring building think that he's going to commit suicide, so they also call the police. And while he's standing on this ledge, suddenly a bunch of guys with guns show up on the ledge, coming out of the windows and from above also, and they start shooting at him.
I have to say, I was very grateful that the dialogue established that this was not the response to the suicide alert.
Right, yeah. Specifically because of the plane spotted him.
Yeah, and the feds are on the case as well. The feds say he's dangerous. So this is being a national effort, really, because there's no way a bunch of cops are going to turn out for someone committing suicide off a building.
Don't commit suicide, kill him. No, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, this is not what is happening here. It's not a duty of care visit that we're seeing here. This is a national manhunt for a piece of sophisticated technology that they're going to neutralize. That's
Right.
happening.
Well, then they start shooting missiles at him.
Take him down.
Yeah, take him and anybody and anything around him. But he
good luck
avoids
to the wildlife because you blow up the landscape.
Yeah. Well, he avoids all of the missiles. We see them all exploding behind him as he's running away. And he doesn't understand what's going on. Why is everybody shooting at him? Did he do something wrong? Or did his father not tell him something that would have helped him understand this? And while he's sitting and thinking about it, some more soldiers show up and take him down. What do they shoot him with? Some kind of a sonic weapon?
Sonic weapons.
Sonic beams.
We've seen this in the previous Kirby books as well, that the sonic weapons come out each time. Yeah, he likes that idea.
And so then he is unconscious in some form and wakes up captured, and this Colonel Craig is talking with him. He's a stereotypical tough army guy, Sergeant Fury without the intelligence. And Dr. Broadhurst says Colonel Craig is insufferable. But Broadhurst's assistant reminds him Craig lost an eye to the machines. That's not really explained further. But maybe one of the other X models that he had to fight. Yeah, because those X models were all going mad.
That's his origin story. Yeah, he lost an eye to a machine. Now he hates them.
Right. But and he has taken off Aaron's face, so that it's just the X-51 face again. And
you're right. It seems to be a rubber mask.
Yeah,
just the way it's called. It's not synthetic metal, or
no.
It looks like an actual. So yeah, the welding comment doesn't make a lot of sense.
But Broadhurst is worried that without the face, X-51 will lose its identity and might go mad, and it's starting to. But then on the last page of the issue, the Monolith appears and I guess gives X-51 the strength to break out of its restraints.
Well, it seems to also save him from going mad. Because that's what we saw happen to the previous models. They had no sense of identity, so they just became violent because they're like, I'm born into a world that is full of pain. But he is starting to lose control. Like he says, he's mentally. Oh, he's actually screaming. He's screaming, "Do you hear me, Dad? They will not listen. They hate me. Why do they hate me? Is it because they fear me? Why? And again, I am an Irish Catholic boy, so I'm immediately going to think of Jesus in the garden, like crying out to God, saying, "Why? Why must I do this? Why must I die?" And then the Monolith appears, and I feel like it's again we're trying to figure out why is this a 2001 comic? What actually does the story of Machine Man have to do with the Monolith? But it does seem to sort of placate him, and it sort of maybe gives some hope. But yeah, he is walking towards it, and at the last page, and then we're going to see him have his further adventures. But there does seem to be a sort of exchange happening there.
X-51 approaches the Monolith. It is destined to serve him in the absence of a dead man. So sort of replacing his father.
Yeah. Give him direction. Give him purpose.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have one. He's been reduced to a machine. He's been reduced to a tool. But he's actually a person. And only his father has ever treated him like a person. So the Monolith will now do the same. It'll treat him like a individual entity with a mind and a potentially soul, and that's kind of what we seem to be burrowing into here.
Yeah. And the last panel says, next, get in on the ground floor and witness the birth of a superhero.
Yes. How do we take this beautiful metaphor for consciousness and just reduce it to the most, trite exercise in genre tropes? Oh, it's a Marvel superhero. Sorry, that's amazing.
So the cover of issue 9 says, "From out of the monolith, the most awesome creation of all, Mr. Machine." And he's being shot at by, as actually happens in the issue, guys in kind of floating eggs are shooting at him.
And he's using his extendo legs.
Right, which doesn't happen very much in the story. I guess there's one panel where he kind of does. I mean, in the subsequent appearances, that's a major feature of the legs and the arms. He does it all the time.
He can produce chainsaws and knives and guns and all sorts of things as well from his fists, like and his chest cavity. Like he's got all these appendages, and in the present day, when he was in the Marvel Zombies comic book, he was just like taking on hordes of zombies single-handedly. Like this is he's become such a meme character now. But yeah, it looks like it was a cover design that future writers then went, "Oh yeah, cool, more of this, please."
Yeah,
so it's an exciting thing.
Right. So now at the start of this issue, he's hopping mad. So he doesn't have his face, and that's just really annoyed him. And it was interesting to me because the only Machine Man I had read before now was post Kirby stuff. And in those issues, he often seemed more kind of unemotional, kind of more of a standard robot type of character. And didn't get angry like this and didn't call people idiots like he does in this issue. So, yeah, Kirby's conception of him is more emotional.
Yeah, and it's funny as well because he's quite conniving, too, because we see him simulate a soldier's voice and then reorder the words so that he would, which is actually something we're dealing with right now, which is that Tim, we've given so much audio to all the AI generators out there. There could be so many AI Tim Youngs out in the world, you have no idea. You could be reading all sorts of reprehensible garbage. You don't even know. You're given so much vocal sampling out there. And that's a legitimate problem that we're staring down the barrel of. Like, what is AI going to do in terms of impersonating people? And Kirby anticipates that straight away. So yeah, that's the first thing he does.
He's also capable of sarcasm, as we'll see later. But yeah, he says, "I've been hunted, fired upon, and thrown into this maximum security cell, but the weapon system in these fingers shall avenge this greatest indignity of all, the removal of my face." So yeah, he knocks out the guards, and from one of them he takes the helmet, gun, and copies his voice. He's recorded what the guy said, and yeah, it's sort of a primitive version of like a voice simulator where he takes the syllables and rearranges them into the message. Send in the troops on the double. That machine is trying to break out of his cell. And so he uses that talking on, I found later in the issue, this is called a visiphone. It's kind of a visual intercom system. And he says these words to a soldier through the visiphone. And so a bunch of soldiers come in and he hides and then locks them in, slips out. There's a movie which will come out in the 80s called Return of the Living Dead. I think 10 years after this, 1988, I believe. In Return of the Living Dead, it might actually be, I think it's Return of the Living Dead. I think it's the first one. A zombie finds a police walkie-talkie and has enough intelligence to whisper into the police walkie-talkie, "Send more cops." They're just eating them. So it reminded me of that. But I feel a recurring bit that we seem to have landed on is every one of these issues. There's always like
panel that I want like blown up and on my wall, and the one I want from this issue is X-51 screaming at the soldier, like screaming him, "Where's my face? Tell me, tell me!" I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I see that panel. Right. So, meanwhile, Broadhurst and Craig are arguing about giving X-51 back his face. Broadhurst says X-51 has been conditioned to wear that face. When you removed it, you robbed him of the only identity he ever had. And the assistant seems to be kind of almost on Craig's side. Or especially when Craig decides, does that happen here?
Yeah, he says you've lost your sense of competency.
Yeah.
That decision will affect more than this research project. They're basically letting him loose.
Right. Broadhurst orders the guards to make no attempt to stop X-51, and Craig and the assistant are both outraged.
Yeah. Now, Broadhurst could have actually explained immediately why, but for dramatic tension, he doesn't.
Right.
For a couple of pages. But, he has a plan. It's
right.
Fine.
So, yeah, you would think he would say right away, because X-51 can't hear them. But, yeah, so X-51 gets his face back and his purple clothes and is allowed to leave. This is where he goes to sarcasm. He says, "Don't think I haven't enjoyed my stay, because I haven't." You've really got a mouth on him. But, yeah, he leaves, and he announces as he's leaving that he'll go by Mr. Machine. And then, after he's gone, Broadhurst says, "Oh, by the way, there's a homing device on him. So don't worry, I got a plan here."
Yeah, he's a sophisticated piece of technology. You don't just let him leave.
No.
They still, even Broadhurst, they still regard him as their property. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. They're not treating him like a person at all, even though there's this sort of pretense of politeness to him, which I think is very well done, actually. And the sequence where they're sort of, is there anything else we could do for you today?
So X-51 flies around, then figures he's going to attract too much attention, so he lands, and then he encounters the Monolith again. And Kirby writes, "Its nature is unfathomable, but there is no denying that contact with it had helped him to escape. He approaches the thing without fear. There is no exchange of words, but there is communication." And Aaron says, "No, I shall not seek destiny. It will find me and lead me to my destined path." Okay, so that's
it. That's,
he's not going to be a star child yet.
I'm not going to skip to the end.
Yeah.
I'm going to let's play this out a little further. Yeah. That's what's happening there.
So then this young boy comes along, Jerry, and I can only tell that because he's short, because his face looks about 35, and he doesn't really talk like a kid either. But, I mean, to be fair, a lot of comics artists have struggled to draw kids.
Yeah. Do you remember the issues of Marvel Man when he meets the little boy in the forest? It's very similar to this encounter, actually. he just runs into him, and Marvel Man's sparkling in the forest clearing, and this little boy meets him, and is like, "Oh, hello there, how are you?" And again, that child looks like a middle-aged man.
I'm remembering in some early appearances of Moon Knight, there was a little girl who didn't look like a convincing little girl. But anyway. So Jerry says, "You look like one of the Marvel superheroes." And he repeatedly mentions Marvel superheroes. And it appears, it's been established in other Marvel comics that there are both real superheroes and comic books about them in the Marvel universe. So that seems to be what's going on here.
Which I genuinely have always loved. I think that's brilliant. I just think it's a great idea that somebody sees all the Marvel superheroes flying around and says, "Oh, I can make money out of that."
I guess they have to get likeness rights.
That's a storyline in Dan Slott's She-Hulk.
I think it's happened in other stories too.
Yeah, there's mention made of their published adventures actually are their real life adventures. They tend to have some access to what's going on.
Well, I'm remembering in John Byrne's Fantastic Four, there was an explanation for why the Human Torch wasn't in the Fantastic Four cartoon.
Wow!
Where they had Herbie the robot instead of.
Yeah.
And according to Byrne, Johnny wasn't around the day that they had to sign the contracts, and so they substituted Herbie. But then, Byrne introduced Herbie into the comic book also.
Oh, that's weird. Let's just read Messing with Johnny now. You can stay home, Johnny. You can stay home. We'll take Herbie. Herbie's much more useful than you.
So the reason this kid is out in the forest is because his Aunt Olivia, who he was riding with, the car's got a flat tire and she's trying to fix it. And X-51 comes along and finishes the job for her, and he lifts the car in a way that defies physics. He's just holding onto the very edge of it, and somehow he's got the leverage to hold the whole thing up level to the ground, parallel to the ground. Like,
don't forget,
Tim.
So. Don't forget, he can cancel gravity.
Okay, and that explains it. Right. All right.
He's canceled the gravity equation.
Okay. So as long as that's the case, then I guess it doesn't defy physics.
It's fine.
So it's not strength, right? It's defying gravity.
Yeah. Or, he's going to break into song. He's going to break into song any minute now. This is where Wicked came from.
Canceling gravity, I should say. Right. So then he hitches a ride with them into town, and we see that they're being observed by this guy called Mr. Hotline.
Oh, he's so bad at names. So reliably terrible at names.
And he's riding in a chauffeured limousine that looks sort of like an early Batmobile.
Yeah, it does look like the Batmobile.
It's got like these kind of spikes on it, or bat ears, bat wings, something.
Well, given that Jack Kirby gave us the Vampire Planet in those early issues, this could be a vampire car.
The chauffeur is named Cringe, that's not a bad name, I guess.
I mean, it's just like it's the cast of Casablanca, It's Sydney Greenstreet in the back there. Like, it's just, Peter Lorre is driving the car,
And Mr. Hotline is wearing a mask for some reason, like a domino mask. A little bit more than a domino. Yeah, he's a supervillain. It covers like half his face. And so he realizes that he's seen an X-model robot that escaped destruction. But he wants to be sure. So he calls in his hover squad. These are the guys in the eggs. And they attack Olivia's car. Doesn't get damaged somehow, but they park it, and Aaron gets out, and this is where he does kind of extend his legs, although he extends the legs in a way that doesn't show that kind of metal Dr. Octopus arm kind of part. It just kind of stretches the existing purple legs. Where on the cover you do see the Dr. Octopus arm kind of metal,
which will become the canonical form of his
yes
extendo legs. Go
extendo
gadget legs.
So we have a couple pages of fight, and he of course defeats all the guys in eggs, which we see at the end. That's confirmed for Mr. Hotline that this is an X model robot. But Olivia says, we need to tell the police about this. Right. Sure, let's tell the police about guys in flying eggs attacking a robot.
Please, uniforms. You must love that prospect. I can't do Laurie. I just realized I can't do Laurie. I apologize to the listeners.
So, final issue 10. And the cover says, Mr. Machine battles overwhelming evil for the one thing he may not possess, a soul. And then further down it says, Hotline to Hades. Okay.
Because this is Hotline, Mr. Hotline,
Yeah, because Mr. Hotline.
Yeah.
And because we've got a demon in this issue, sort of. So we start with the three of them talking to a sheriff who's completely skeptical of the whole story they're telling him. And I was going to mention, still in issue 10, the little upper left corner illustration is a caveman, an astronaut, and the monolith, which is seeming less and less appropriate.
Sure,
we don't even have the monolith in this issue.
Yeah. Now this is just your ash can for the Mr. America, Mr. Machine.
Certainly no cavemen and no astronauts.
No. But what if they fought? Yeah, carry on.
Right. So, yeah, the sheriff doesn't really make much of it. It's like, what the? And then we see Mr. Hotline, and he's part of a cult that's worshiping this apparent demon devil called the Mind Monitor, which doesn't seem like a demon name, but I don't know. So the Mind Monitor says he wants to see X-51 in person. So he's interested in these X-model robots for some reason. And he says, like a virus, it shall be isolated and probed until its secret gives me the power to control all living things. So they want the technology, basically, for their world domination plans.
So again, as we've seen before with the demon, Kirby doesn't get occult stuff.
Right.
But he keeps doing it. And I don't know why, because he's actually very au fait with science fiction stuff. Like he's quite a visionary. But whenever he starts like rifling through the dusty box of gothic themes and occult characters, it's just naff. Like, this is where, some of this series' reputation does become clear to me, because and maybe it's because these are the issues people were actually reading, because they were just reading about Machine Man. But once that demonic character rocks up, I'm going, no. Like, even if it was like, maybe, here's my pitch, maybe it was a seed that had gone to seed, a seed that had gone a bit wrong, and was now manifesting as a demonic entity for the lower humans that it used to count among, and it knows how to manipulate them because it used to be a person and it could manipulate human venality. Maybe that could be a way to explore the concept of what happens when the monolith is creating all these higher order beings flying around in little utero spacecraft, and what if one went evil? Like, that's an idea.
Yeah,
like, we could go with that. No, he's a giant red dude.
Yeah,
with eyebrows.
So then we go to the home of the Fields, which is Olivia and her nephew Jerry and a judge named Franklin Fields, and I guess that's Olivia's father, or it wasn't clear what the relationship was.
Well, I mean, the sheriff was talking about whether they should talk to the judge. They knew he was a guest of the Fields. They seem to be the Fields. So, yeah. So the fact that they talked about, the judge, let's just wait for what the judge has to say. They're going to his house. So the wheels of justice, they do grind slowly here. Like, it seems to be a case of the sheriff's going, all right, well, the judge is going to make a call on this, and he's got to meet him. So let's just see what he has to say.
The sheriff said, I'd run a check on him if he wasn't a guest of the Fields. And the deputy says, the judge might take offense at that. Let's wait for his word. So they're not going to do anything.
It's beyond their pay grade, in effect.
Yeah. So in conversation with the judge, it comes up that the death of Abel Stack has been in the news, and Aaron had no idea, of course. He's been kind of busy being kidnapped and all that. So he's really sad to hear that. So I guess he has emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, certainly he has sarcasm and anger.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's just gotten this news, and the family's kind of gathering around him, and then a bunch of guys with guns come in. Yeah, these are Mr. Hotline's goons who are going to kidnap him. They manage to do so, and so he's brought before Mr. Hotline, who is very, like, bigoted against machines, I could say. It's like, machines do not question men, he says. And Machine Man says, this machine does. And
hotline to Hades. He's the hotline to hell.
Right.
Sorry. Delayed reaction.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
Mr. Hotline and the demon who's from hell. So, right.
Yeah, hotline to Hades. Carry on. Apologies. Yeah, he hates machines.
Yeah, so they try to shoot at Aaron, and everything just bounces off, and Mr. Hotline says, cease firing, you dolts. Those guns are useless against the next model. There is another way to make him behave. One of his goons has bombs strapped to him. We kind of got a shot of it earlier. Well, it wasn't completely explained then, but he's staying at the Fields house, and so if Aaron doesn't cooperate with Mr. Hotline, they'll set off the bombs and blow up the Fields, and I guess the goon also. So he wants to disassemble X-51, and so X-51 kind of surrenders to them because of the threat to the Fields. And they take apart, like, his head, arms, legs from the torso, so he's in 6 pieces, and they take the head to see the mind monitor, and the mind monitor is kind of zapping him with eye beams, and in reaction to that, Aaron is able to get in touch with the rest of his body, and all the arms and legs sprout TV cameras and start fighting the technicians and reassemble, and then come to where he is to retrieve the head.
Yeah, like we've gone full New Gods now, because now we're dealing with the anti-life equation, because that's what this is all about. It's about driving consciousness out from the minds of every person on the planet. So now we're going, this is a New God story that got left on a shelf somewhere and Kirby's dusted it off, I guess. But like the sequence of the limbs attacking the soldiers is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool moment.
Aaron figures out that this demon mind monitor is just a hologram, or a holographic image. What was it he said? That was controlled by a supercomputer. So I was wondering, how does a holographic image shoot eye beams that zap him? That didn't quite make sense to me. So then Aaron is able to manipulate the supercomputer so that the bombs on the goon at the Fields house just disintegrate harmlessly, turn into a dry powder. So, and it seems they've also kind of zapped the goon, so he's out. And so Olivia, of course, she has to call the sheriff. That's kind of her move. Let's call law enforcement.
Yeah. And the judge has to make a joke about getting a reprieve in the final moments before execution, because he sent people to their deaths. I'm a judge. I kill people. So there's and then that bloody kid is still talking about writing a letter to Marvel Comics and telling them all about it. I really want you all to go out tomorrow and buy the first issue of Mr. Machine.
Right. So as Aaron has blown up Mr. Hotline's headquarters And he's thinking, whoever built the Mind Monitor as the center of a devil-worshipping cult is an evil genius with dreams too big to have been Mr. Hotline. It may be my destiny to find him and stop him, to protect man's right to think free. And then the final panel says, don't stop here, readers. Follow the strange and stupefying adventures of Mr. Machine in his own magazine. Watch for it. I think it took the better part of a year before that came out,
But yeah, like in the final half of this issue, we suddenly return full force to the new gods. And once again, it's this confrontation between individuality and the fascist exploitation of technology to control and dominate human life. And we're going, it's the greats. We're back to the hits. This is what it's all about, guys. And, I was joking with you before about the AI synthesization of our voices and so forth. We're staring down the barrel of some weird techno-fascist nonsense at the moment. So this kind of feels of the moment, of our time, in a strange way. Yeah.
So I'm glad to have finally read these Mr. Machine issues. I'd never seen any of Kirby's own Machine Man work. I'm thinking after we've finished all the Kirby 70s stuff, I would like to go ahead with the post-Kirby Machine Man and take a look at his later appearances on the podcast. I read like the stuff that was written by Marv Wolfman and drawn by Steve Ditko. That started in like 1979, I think.
Right.
And it was not peak Ditko, to put it mildly. But I read those, and I think I've read some other Machine Man appearances later. But I'd kind of like to piece it all together. I don't think they've even used the character in like 20 years, have they? Well, you said he was in Marvel Zombies, but
he's in Marvel Zombies. He's in Next Wave.
I don't think he's had his own book in a long time.
He had his own book just a couple of years ago. There was the 2020 Machine Man series that came out. So he's sort of like he got a fresh coat of paint from Warren Ellis and the creative teams behind Next Wave, and that sort of made him more engaging. And as I said to you before, he basically became a meme character. Like he hates humans, and he's drunk all the time, and he's basically a Swiss Army knife that looks like a person, and he can fight zombies and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he sort of was being teased. The other big showing for him, I think, was in that Alex Ross series in the 90s, where you had the future of the Marvel Universe, and he played, he was like a sort of witness. He was going to replace Uatu. He was going to become the Watcher. And that was Alex Ross's big sort of uniting idea, that all the Kirby creations would come together in the end.
Okay. I guess you did mention the Warren Ellis before. I think I was thinking about what to talk about next, and I didn't completely absorb that. But I think the last time I saw him was when, like about 25 years ago, they kind of tied him in with Sentinel technology, and he was showing up in X-Men books.
Yeah. And Earth X was the book I was trying to think of, the Alex Ross book. He sort of, everything was being tied into the X-Men at that time, though.
Right.
Like everything was, but yeah,
there were 25 X-Men books, I think.
It does make some logical sense for him to be connected to the Sentinels, at least. There's a, because he looked like them.
Yeah.
they also
they
were
both
purple.
like purple. Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes some broad sense, I guess. But
yeah. Well, it's kind of the same as John Byrne making Norman Osborn and Sandman related because they have the same hair.
Same hair. Oh, amazing. Yes, white people don't have those cornrows naturally. It's very specific family. Yeah. All that stuff's just goofy. I sometimes don't mind it. But John Byrne in particular is somebody who seems to obsess about trivia, and then you'll create an entire storyline to justify it. And no one cares, man. No one cares. What are you doing?
Okay, so that's 2001. So I think next time we do one of these, we'll go back and get the Eternals.
Very good. Looking forward to it. Another fresh start for Kirby.
Kirby's 2001 series is available online as used copies for sale and can also be read on archive.org, which I'll link to in the show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics, and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on X, Facebook, or YouTube. Via our site, you can also shop on Amazon to support the show and find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode there or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. And now you can also send us a voicemail. Find the Leave a Voicemail link on the left sidebar of our site. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next week, Kumar and I move ahead on Kentaro Miura's Berserk. Volumes 11 and 12 are even more upsetting and more fascinating than the previous installments. The gory details next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.